In the heart of the vast Arabian desert, where the golden sands stretch endlessly under a blazing sun, there stands a place unlike any other on earth. A place that has drawn kings and beggars, prophets and pilgrims, warriors and wanderers for thousands of years. This place is the Kaaba, the sacred sanctuary at the center of Makkah, a cube-shaped structure whose history reaches back further than the pages of most civilizations. To see it is to witness the living heart of the Muslim world, pulsing with faith and devotion. Yet hidden within its eastern corner lies something that has stirred curiosity and awe. For centuries, a small dark stone unlike any other, a stone so revered that millions long to lay their lips upon it. This is the Black Stone, and it is surrounded by a mystery that refuses to fade. Imagine for a moment standing among millions of people from every nation, all moving together in perfect harmony, all drawn toward this one point in the world. Not for its size or grandeur, but for the command of the Almighty. And there, embedded in the Kaaba, is this stone, smooth from the touch of countless hands, kissed by the lips of those who came before you, and holding within it a story that stretches from the heavens to the earth. For some, it is a symbol of history. For others, a sign of divine connection. But for every believer, it is a reminder of something far greater than itself. The Black Stone is no ordinary rock. Islamic tradition tells us it came from a place far beyond human reach, from Jannah, the eternal gardens of paradise, sent down to earth as a gift from Allah to Prophet Ibrahim and his son Ismail. It was to be the cornerstone of the Kaaba, the marker of the house of Allah. But this stone was not always black. In the earliest days, it is said to have shone a brilliant white, so pure and radiant that it stood out even in the brightness of the desert sun. It was a stone of light, unmarred by the touch of sin. Over the centuries, however, it absorbed the sins of those who touched it, turning it darker and darker until it became the deep, mysterious black we see today. And yet, even in its darkened form, it remains a heavenly relic, a link between the mortal world and the realm of the unseen. Think about that. Every mark, every crack, every worn edge tells the story of humanity's longing for forgiveness of generation after generation, reaching out to a gift that was once placed directly into the hands of prophets. It is a stone that has seen the footsteps of angels and heard the prayers of countless believers, and it continues to stand as a silent witness to the promise made between Allah and His creation. And this is only the beginning of its story. When Prophet Ibrahim was commanded by Allah to build the Kaaba, it was not merely a task of stacking stones or raising walls. It was an act of devotion that would echo through every generation to come. Alongside him was his son Ismail, still young but already chosen to share in this monumental mission. Together under the burning Arabian sun and upon the very ground Allah had sanctified, they lifted stone after stone, building the sacred sanctuary, exactly as Allah had instructed. Every placement, every movement was a prayer in action, a physical manifestation of obedience. And then came the moment for the final piece, the cornerstone that would complete the house of Allah. This was no ordinary stone. It was the Black Stone, a heavenly relic sent down to earth as a sign of Allah's mercy. Ibrahim took it with reverence, setting it into the eastern corner of the Kaaba, marking not just the completion of the structure, but the beginning of a legacy that would call people from every corner of the earth. The Black Stone was not placed for decoration, nor as a symbol of worldly power, but as a reminder of a covenant, a sacred agreement between the Creator and His creation that the Kaaba would be a place where hearts turn only toward Him. From that moment onward, the stone became a witness, standing silently in its place, watching over every pilgrim who came to fulfill the rites that Allah had prescribed. It was there when Ibrahim and Ismail raised their hands in dua, asking Allah to accept their efforts. It was there when they proclaimed that this house would be for all mankind, open to every believer until the end of time. and so it stood unshaken as centuries passed. It watched the desert sands shift, caravans come and go, and tribes rise and fall. It stood as a constant in a world of change, bearing silent testimony to the worship of generations. Long before the Prophet Muhammad received revelation, the Black Stone had already seen countless faces, heard countless prayers, and felt the hands of people seeking closeness to their Lord. In the age of the Quraysh, the Kaaba was the heart of Mecca, not just spiritually, but socially and economically. Traders and travelers came from across Arabia to gather during sacred months, circling the Kaaba as an ancient tradition. Though much of the pure worship of Allah had been replaced by idol worship. And yet even then the Black Stone remained untouched in its significance, holding within it the echoes of Ibrahim's time. It was the unbroken link between the pure monotheism of the prophets and the corrupted practices that had crept into Mecca. Through heat and storm, through times of peace and times of war, it stayed embedded in its corner, a silent reminder of a promise long forgotten by many, but never erased from the truth. Every person who looked upon it, whether in faith or in ignorance, stood before an object that had come from beyond the limits of this world. And the day would come when the one chosen to restore the Kaaba's true purpose would stand before it. Not yet as a prophet, but already as the man whose hands would touch the Black Stone with wisdom and justice. Long before the first words of revelation descended upon Muhammad, Mecca was already a place of deep reverence for the tribes of Arabia. The Kaaba stood at its heart, drawing people from distant deserts and mountain valleys, a center for both worship and gathering. But in those days, the purity of Ibrahim's monotheism had been diluted, replaced by idols and practices foreign to its original purpose. Even so, the structure itself remained sacred in the eyes of every tribe, and the Black Stone embedded in its eastern corner held a status no one dared to challenge. One year, a fierce flood swept through Mecca, its waters roaring through the narrow streets and battering the Kaaba's walls until they cracked and weakened. The people knew the house of Allah could not be left in such a state. They had to rebuild it, for to leave it broken was unthinkable. Yet there was a hesitation. This was no ordinary building, and no one wished to be the cause of divine displeasure. They agreed that the work could only be done with wealth earned from pure and honest means, free of theft, injustice, or forbidden trade. Piece by piece, they dismantled the damaged walls, stone by stone, until the Kaaba stood as an open foundation once more, ready to be raised anew. The rebuilding began in unity, each tribe taking on a section of the work. The air was filled with the sounds of hammers striking stone, men calling instructions, and the steady rhythm of labor driven by devotion. The walls rose higher each day, the structure taking shape once again, stronger than before. But then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, the placement of the Black Stone. It was here that unity shattered. Every tribe wanted the honor of placing it into its position, for to do so was to gain everlasting glory and prestige among the people. Words of pride turned into words of anger, and soon voices were raised, threats exchanged, and swords nearly drawn. Days passed without a solution, and tension grew heavier with each sunrise. Old rivalries fanned the flames of mistrust, and the shadow of bloodshed loomed dangerously close over the city. Finally, the elders realized the matter could not go on. They needed an answer before the sanctity of the Kaaba became tainted with violence. They agreed that the next man to enter the haram would decide the matter for them all. That man was Muhammad ibn Abdullah, still years away from his first revelation, yet already known throughout Mecca as Al-Amin, the trustworthy. When the tribe saw him approaching, relief washed over them. Here was a man no one doubted, a man whose word carried the weight of fairness. They explained the dispute, the urgency, and the stakes. Muhammad listened quietly, his gaze moving between the Black Stone and the gathered leaders, understanding the pride and honor each sought, but also knowing the danger that pride could bring. Then, with calm wisdom, he proposed a solution so simple, yet so profound that it left no room for disagreement. He called for a large cloth to be brought to him, placing the black stone gently in its center. He instructed each tribal leader to take hold of the cloth's edges. Together they lifted it toward the Ka, every tribe sharing equally in the honor. When they reached the wall, Muhammad himself guided the stone into its place with his own hands. What could have been a moment of division and bloodshed became a moment of shared pride and peace. In that instant, he not only saved Makkah from conflict, but also left a mark upon the Black Stone's history that would be remembered long after the revelation came to him. The stone now bore not only the touch of prophets before him, but also the hands of the one who would soon become the seal of the prophets, restoring the Ka to its true purpose. When the season of pilgrimage arrives and the believers enter the sacred precincts, the Kaaba becomes the center of a living ocean of movement, waves of people flowing around it in endless circles, hearts beating in unison, tongues whispering the praises of Allah. Among the rituals performed there, one act has held a unique place in the hearts of Muslims for over 14 centuries. Approaching the black stone during the Taw, as pilgrims pass the eastern corner of the Kaaba, they strive to touch it, kiss it, or at the very least raise their hand toward it in acknowledgement. This act is not an obligation, but a sunnah, a cherished tradition, that connects the worshipper directly to the actions of the Prophet Muhammad himself. It is reported that he kissed the black stone, and in doing so he affirmed that its significance comes not from its ability to bring benefit or harm, but from the honor Allah has placed upon it and the example set by his messenger, Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph, once stood before it and said, "I know that you are only a stone, and that you can neither harm nor benefit anyone. Had I not seen the messenger of Allah kiss you, I would not have kissed you." This statement still echoes in the hearts of pilgrims today, a reminder that the act is not born from superstition, but from obedience and love for the Prophet. For many, the moment of touching the black stone is deeply emotional, a culmination of yearning and sacrifice, a chance to stand exactly where prophets once stood and placed their hands on something that descended from paradise. Physically, the black stone is far smaller than most imagine. It is not a towering monument, but a modest, irregular shape made up of several pieces now held together by a thick silver frame that shines in contrast to its dark surface. Its size is roughly that of a loaf of bread. Yet its weight in history and faith is beyond measure. Over centuries, the constant touch of millions of hands and lips has worn its surface smooth and slightly concave, so that when a pilgrim presses their face to it, they feel the shallow curve formed by generations before them. The silver frame that encircles it is not merely decorative. It protects the stone's fragments which were damaged in various incidents throughout history, keeping them united in their rightful place. Pilgrims often notice that the black stone is set slightly lower than eye level, making it accessible to those who draw near, though reaching it amid the crowds is no easy task. Yet even those who cannot physically touch it find comfort in raising their hand toward it during each circuit, knowing that Allah rewards the intention and the sincerity of the heart. The preservation of the black stone has become an act of devotion in itself, with careful attention given to its upkeep, cleaning, and protection, ensuring that it remains a living link between the worshippers of today and the prophets of the past. Every mark on its surface, every crack filled and sealed, tells a story not of fragility but of endurance. For despite everything it has faced, the black stone continues to rest in its place, awaiting the touch of those who circle the Ka in submission to the will of Allah. Through the long stretch of history, the black stone has not only been revered, but also tested by trials that would have destroyed ordinary relics. It has endured natural disasters, human greed, and the violence of those who sought to harm the sanctity of the Ka itself. Perhaps the most infamous of these events occurred in the year 930 when a sect known as the Kashians stormed Mecca during the Hajj season. In a shocking act of desecration, they slaughtered pilgrims in the sacred precincts and pried the black stone from its place, carrying it away to their stronghold in Bahrain. For more than 20 years, the Kaaba stood without its cornerstone, its eastern corner left bare, the hearts of Muslims across the world heavy with grief. The loss was more than symbolic. It was as if a piece of the Kaaba's very soul had been taken. When the black stone was finally returned in 952, it was no longer whole. It had been broken into several pieces, some small enough to fit in the palm of a hand. Yet the faithful did not reject it. Instead, they gathered the fragments and bound them together with a mixture of protective substances, eventually securing them with the silver frame that still surrounds it today. This act was more than restoration. It was a declaration that even when the stone was fractured, the faith it represented would never be broken. Over the centuries, other incidents of damage occurred, whether through accidental impact, fire, or crowd surges, each time leaving its mark upon the stone, but never erasing its place in the hearts of believers. It is for this reason that scholars throughout Islamic history have spoken with such care about the meaning of the black stone and how it should be understood. They have made it clear that it is not an object of worship, for worship belongs to Allah alone. Its honor comes from the role it has played since the time of Ibrahim and the fact that the Prophet Muhammad himself touched and kissed it, establishing a sunnah that Muslims continue to follow. Some have compared it to the Maqam Ibrahim, the station, where the Prophet Ibrahim stood during the construction of the Kaaba, blessed and revered because of its connection to prophetic history, but never elevated to the status of a deity. In every age, scholars have reminded the people that while the black stone is a sign of Allah's mercy and a marker of unity, it holds no power independent of Him. Its value is in what it represents: the covenant between Creator and creation, the continuity of the prophetic message, and the shared experience of believers across time and place. When a pilgrim touches or gestures toward it, they are not seeking the stone's favor, but affirming their place in a chain of worship that stretches back to the earliest prophets. This clarity protects the act from drifting into superstition and keeps it rooted in the pure monotheism that is the foundation of Islam. And so the black stone endures not as an idol to be feared or a talisman to be clutched for luck, but as a witness, one that has seen the devotion of countless generations and will, by Allah's will, stand to see the final day when all accounts are settled, when the season of Hajj comes and the Kaaba is surrounded by millions of believers. There is a moment in Tawaf when the black stone becomes the focal point for hearts from every corner of the globe. Here there is no difference between the king and the farmer, the scholar and the laborer, the young and the old. Every pilgrim clothed in the same simple garments of Ikram steps forward with the same longing to acknowledge this stone that has stood since the time of Ibrahim, to honor the sunnah of the Prophet, and to be part of a ritual shared by the entire Ummah. The black stone stands as a physical symbol of unity, not because it draws people to itself for its own sake, but because it gathers them around a central act of worship that transcends race, nationality, wealth, and status. In that moment, the languages of the world blend into one sound: the murmur of dhikr, the recitation of Quran, the whispers of dua. Every pilgrim faces the same house, moves in the same direction, and acknowledges the same sign that Allah placed upon the earth. The crowd is a living demonstration of the equality Islam commands, and the black stone in its stillness reflects this truth more powerfully than words ever could. Even those who cannot reach it physically join in the same act by raising their hand toward it, showing that the unity it represents is not limited to physical contact, but is rooted in shared intention and obedience to Allah. Yet the significance of the black stone is not only in the unity it inspires today, it is also in the connection it preserves across the vast stretch of history. When a pilgrim's hand touches its smooth, time-worn surface, they are touching something that prophets once touched: the same stone that Ibrahim set in place, that Ismail stood beside, that Muhammad kissed, remains there still, linking the present with the earliest chapters of human faith. In that instant, centuries collapse. The line between past and present blurs, and the believer stands shoulder to shoulder with those who came before, sharing in the same act of devotion. Every kiss, every touch, every raised hand becomes a thread in a vast tapestry woven over more than 1,000 years. It is as though the stone holds within it the silent imprint of all those moments, the hope of the repentant, the gratitude of the forgiven, the tears of those overwhelmed by Allah's mercy. The connection is not just to history, but to destiny. For those who approach it with sincerity are reminded that their own lives are part of a much greater story. The black stone is not simply a relic to be admired. It is a living witness to the unbroken chain of worship that began with the first prophets and will continue until the last day. In its presence, one cannot help but feel the weight of that legacy and the privilege of being a part of it. Today, the black stone rests in a place of honor, carefully protected and tended to with the utmost respect. The responsibility of preserving it is taken with a seriousness that reflects its history and the reverence it commands among Muslims throughout the year, and especially during the seasons of Hajj and Umrah. It is meticulously cleaned and perfumed with special scented oils. This process is not merely about maintaining its physical appearance. It is a continuation of a centuries-old tradition that recognizes the stone as part of the sacred trust of the Kaaba. The silver frame that holds it together is regularly inspected to ensure that no harm comes to the fragments inside. For these pieces are all that remain of the original stone that once descended from paradise. Authorities regulate the flow of pilgrims around it, implementing measures to prevent injuries from the rush of those eager to get close. Even with these protections, touching or kissing the black stone is not always possible due to the immense crowds. But the care taken to preserve it ensures that every pilgrim, whether near or far, can still feel its presence and significance. The fragrance of the oils lingers in the air around it, adding another layer to the sensory memory of those blessed to be in its proximity. And for many, just seeing it with their own eyes becomes a treasured moment that lives forever in the heart. Yet with its fame and the awe it inspires, the black stone has also been surrounded by myths and misconceptions. Some imagine it to be a mystical talisman with powers to grant wishes or bring fortune, while others speculate on its physical origin, suggesting that it may be a meteorite or a fragment from the heavens. Islam, however, brings clarity to these notions. The black stone is revered not because of any inherent magical power, but because of its divine history and the role it plays in the rites established by Allah through His prophets. The Prophet, Muhammad himself, made it clear that the stone cannot harm or benefit anyone by itself. It is Allah alone who grants mercy, answers prayers, and forgives sins. Its sanctity comes from the fact that it was placed in the Kaaba by Ibrahim, touched and kissed by the Messenger of Allah, and designated as a marker within the sacred rituals of Hajj and Umrah. By following the Sunnah in interacting with it, Muslims demonstrate obedience, humility, and love for the traditions passed down to them. This understanding protects the purity of worship, ensuring that the black stone remains what it was always meant to be, a symbol of divine connection, not an object of worship in itself. In this way, it continues to inspire hearts without leading them astray, standing as a reminder that faith is built not on superstition, but on the guidance and truth revealed by Allah. For many who journey to Makkah, the first sight of the black stone is an experience that words can scarcely contain. The moment often comes after days, weeks, or even years of longing, planning, saving, and praying for the chance to stand before the Kaaba. As the pilgrim draws closer, weaving through the rhythmic flow of the toe, the silver-encased stone comes into view, and the heart begins to beat faster. There is a sudden weight in the chest, a rush of gratitude and awe, and for some an uncontrollable stream of tears. These are not tears born of sadness, but of overwhelming realization that they are standing in a place touched by prophets, a place blessed by Allah, a place that countless believers before them have yearned for and traveled unimaginable distances to reach. Some feel the history in the very air around it, imagining the hands of Ibrahim lifting it into position, the gentle touch of Muhammad as he placed it in the Kaaba, the countless moments of devotion that have taken place here across centuries. Others are struck by a humbling awareness of their own lives, their struggles, their sins, and the mercy of Allah that has brought them to this moment. The crowd, the heat, the noise, all of it fades into the background. And for those few seconds, the connection is deeply personal. Even if they cannot physically touch the stone, the act of facing it, raising a hand toward it, and uttering the praises of Allah becomes a treasured memory that lives forever in their hearts. In the realm of the unseen, the black stone story does not end with this world. Islamic tradition tells us that on the day of judgment, it will be raised with eyes and a tongue, and it will bear witness on behalf of those who touched it in truth and sincerity. It will testify for those who honored it as part of their worship of Allah, those who followed the Sunnah and approached it with humility and love, not superstition or arrogance. This thought adds a profound layer to the act of touching or gesturing toward the stone, every sincere moment before it becomes a record preserved until the day when all accounts are settled. On that day when every soul will stand in need of mercy, the black stone will speak on behalf of those who remembered Allah in its presence. The idea that an object from paradise sent to earth thousands of years ago will one day testify in the hereafter bridges the gap between time and eternity, between the physical act of worship in this life and the eternal reality of the next. It reminds believers that nothing done sincerely for Allah is ever lost, and that even the smallest act, one raised hand, one whispered takbir before the black stone, can echo into the most decisive day of all. In this way, the black stone is not just a relic of the past. It is a witness to the present and a companion into the future that awaits every soul. The black stone holds within it lessons that go far beyond its physical presence, lessons meant to shape the heart and guide the believer's understanding of faith. It teaches humility, for no matter how great a person's status in this world may be, when they approach the Kaaba, they approach like everyone else, bareheaded, clothed in simple garments, stripped of worldly titles and privileges. They come as servants of Allah, equal in His sight, their only distinction being the sincerity of their hearts. Touching or gesturing toward the black stone is not a display of personal achievement or power. It is an act of submission to a tradition rooted in divine command. It reminds the believer that the true value of any symbol in Islam is not in the material from which it is made, nor in the myths that might surround it, but in its role as a means of obedience to Allah. Just as the black stone itself has no power to grant or withhold, neither do the outward acts of worship have meaning without the inward reality of devotion, sincerity, and humility. For those who truly reflect, the stone becomes a mirror of their own state, its darkened surface, a reminder that sins stain the soul and its enduring place in the Kaaba, a sign that repentance and steadfastness keep a believer anchored to the mercy of Allah. By following the Sunnah in honoring it, the Muslim affirms that guidance is found not in inventing new forms of worship, but in preserving and continuing the path that Allah has already perfected through His messengers. But the black stone also teaches perspective, showing that while symbols of faith are important, they must never overshadow the purpose of faith itself. The stone is beloved because it was placed by Ibrahim, touched by Muhammad, and made part of the rituals of Hajj and Umrah. But the ultimate aim of those rituals is to draw the heart closer to Allah. A pilgrim may complete their entire Hajj without ever reaching the black stone due to the press of the crowds, and yet their worship remains complete if their intention is pure and their acts are sincere. This truth is a powerful reminder that no created thing, no matter how revered, is the focus of a Muslim's devotion. Every step around the Kaaba, every supplication, every gesture toward the black stone is ultimately an act directed to the Creator alone. This understanding protects the believer from superstition and keeps worship pure. It also reassures those who cannot stand near the stone that their worship is no less accepted. For Allah measures the heart, not the proximity of the body. Tabai. The end, the black stone, is a guidepost, not the destination. It points the believer toward the greater reality that all acts of worship, whether performed beside the Ka or in the quiet of a distant home, are accepted only when they are done for Allah's sake alone. And in realizing this, the pilgrim leaves Mecca not only with memories of the stone's presence, but with a deeper awareness of the purpose of their journey and the one to whom they return. Even after centuries of study, devotion, and preservation, the black stone continues to hold mysteries that remain beyond human understanding. Its true origin is known only through revelation, and while scholars and historians can describe its appearance, its history, and the events it has witnessed, they cannot fully explain the nature of a stone that descended from paradise. What material is it truly made of? How exactly did it travel from the unseen realm to the earthly deserts of Arabia? What did it look like in its original form before the touch of humanity's sins darkened its surface? These are questions that stir curiosity but remain unanswered, as if the stone itself guards its secrets until the appointed time. Perhaps this is part of its purpose to remind believers that not everything in faith can be measured or fully comprehended by the human mind. The black stone stands as a tangible link to the divine, a sign that Allah can place in this world something that defies the limits of earthly explanation. This air of mystery deepens its impact on those who see it. For in a world where so much is analyzed and categorized, here stands a relic that refuses to yield all of its truth. It draws the believer to reflect on the unseen realities of faith, the angels, the hereafter, the divine decrees, things that, like the black stone's full story, must be accepted with trust in Allah's wisdom. The mystery is not a gap in knowledge, to be feared, but an invitation to awe, to humility, and to submission before the one who knows all. For those who have not yet seen it, the black stone remains a dream carried in the heart, a point on the map of faith that they hope one day to reach. For those who have touched it, kissed it, or even simply raised their hand toward it, the memory is etched so deeply that it becomes a treasure more valuable than gold. The experience transcends words, leaving behind an imprint of connection that cannot be forgotten. Yet whether a believer has stood before it or only prayed in its direction from across the world, the black stone serves as a reminder of the journey that every soul must take. Not just the physical journey to the Ka, but the lifelong journey toward Allah. The pilgrim's path does not end when they leave Makkah. In truth, that is when the real journey begins, carrying the lessons of the pilgrimage into daily life. Striving to maintain the sincerity, humility, and devotion that the rites of Hajj instilled, the black stone calls to the believer not just to travel to it, but to live in a way that will bring them on the day of judgment to the ultimate meeting with their Creator. It is a silent witness now, but on that day it will speak, and its testimony will be a reflection of how one lived, not merely how close one came to touching it. In this way, it is both a relic of the past and a signpost for the future, reminding every believer that this world is a temporary stop on the way to an eternal home. Those who hear that call and respond with sincerity will find when the journey is complete that the reward awaiting them far surpasses the joy of any earthly encounter. Even the joy of standing before the black stone in the sacred sanctuary of Mecca